Hi, this is Professor Charlie Evans, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the gunpowder empires of the 17th and 18th century, the 1600s and 1700s, for those of you who get mixed up with the centuries and hundreds. And the specific empires are the Ottoman Empire, which encircles the Mediterranean, the Safavid Empire, which borders on the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf, and the Mughal Empire, which is pretty much the subcontinent, South Asia. These were really the height of the civilized world in the 17th century. In the ensuing centuries, they would gradually diminish in power and eventually cease to exist. But that decline, if you want to use that word, took hundreds of years. It's not something that happened overnight. Um, each of the empires was a multinational empire, and in terms of the 17th century, we might be better to use the word multi-ethnic empire. They were multi-religious empires. Each empire had subjects of different religious faiths within its borders. Each of the empires was a dynastic empire based on a family dynasty that ruled the empire and that wielded considerable power. As you look at the map, one of the things that's striking is there's just a really small little bit of Western Europe over here. But somehow in the next 200 years or so, it would be that small landmass of Western Europe that came to dominate the world and really came to supplant the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal empires in most respect as the most powerful empires in the world. And all of the three empires that we're talking about today suffered at the hands of Western European powers. Now, why that happened is something that we're going to be examining in the rest of 1112. But what I want to say now is that what's really striking is the accounts of European travelers to the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal empires in the 17th century. The Europeans are so struck by the overwhelming wealth of these empires, the magnificence of the architecture and the building. You know, this was truly the height of power, and the European observers just could not imagine um, how this could exist in these empires and how primitive really Europe seemed in comparison to them. Um, One of the things that contributed to the eventual shift in the balance of power between Western Europe and these two empires was a technological advance. As Europeans invented and created new technologies that led them to be more powerful from a military point of view, from a communication and travel point of view. They became more, I don't know, powerful, if you want to use that word. And that gave them advantage over these empires, which really, while they were at the height of military and technology in the 17th century, that gradually decreased in the ensuing years as these countries did not keep up with technological advance. I'm looking at my notes here, trying to figure out what else I should say here. One of the questions I wrote down here is, what does it mean to modernize? And historians for a long time looked at the span of world history from 1600 to the present and looked at how the countries of Western Europe modernized, how their social structure changed, how their political structure changed, how their economies changed. And the term that was used to describe that was modernization, the creation of a modern nation state. And it was assumed that the reason that gave the countries of Western Europe an advantage over these empires, specifically the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal Empire, which for some reason didn't modernize. Now, in recent years, that whole term of modernization has come into uh, dispute. Historians are really unsure what it really means, how applicable it is to the study of history, how applicable it is to the balance of power, political power in the world, and how one empire rises in power and one empire. So the whole idea of modernization has kind of been called into question. We're going to return to that later in History 1112. But for now, that's something to keep in mind as we look at these areas of the world. But for now, for the 17th century, for the early part of the 18th century, the Ottoman Empire, the Safavid Empire, the Mughal Empire, this was really the height of world civilization. Okay?